Hello, 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 coaches and leaders. I almost forgot my microphone there. I am so excited. I feel I don't know, like a friend to geek out with one of my most favoriteest things to talk about. If you've been listening to the podcast, you know I love talking about listening. And I think listening is literally one of the most, if not the most important skill of coaches in the whole wide world. And I think it just gets slept on. Like, anyway, so Christine Miles, I'm like excited. You're like an expert on listening. And uh stay tuned, folks, because we're also going to be talking about interrupting
hmm
as related to listening. So I'm really excited to talk about like how to effectively interrupt people. So, um, first of all, Christine, welcome to the show. I'm excited you're here.
Well, I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So, um, I'd love you to share with everyone briefly what's been your journey from like where you started to what you do now in kind of leadership and in education.
Okay. Yeah. So I always say I started at 5 because that's when I started to learn differently. That's my earliest memory, by the way, of
Uh-huh.
listening differently.
Uh-huh.
It comes from an honest place. I grew up with a mother who had mental health issues
Mhm.
stemming from the loss of her mother.
Mhm.
And my mother was incredibly warm and charismatic, and she lit up the room, but the pain below the surface was profound that most people didn't see. So my job was to understand that pain. I often say, great burden, great gift, right?
Mhm.
So I'd like to think I'm extraordinary in a lot of ways, but I'm actually very average. And I wish I were being modest, but that is the truth,
Mhm.
academically, sports wise, etc. But I've always, when I've overachieved, and I've achieved some pretty extraordinary things, it's because of that skill.
Mhm.
I started as a family therapist and I started working with businesses when I was 26. And I saw over and over again the same problem. It wasn't what people said, it's what they didn't understand.
Mhm.
So through the course of my career, I've spent really digging into helping people learn how to build that skill. In the last 10, I've really worked to codify that in a powerful way that's tangible, more simple to adopt, and to really change the world one conversation at a time through listening.
I want to highlight what you just said. It's the issue wasn't what people said, it's what they didn't understand. I love this. I love statements that are poignant and say exactly the thing that they need to say. And that's beautiful. It's not because so often when I'm running workshops, the first thing my coaches and leaders want are what to say.
Yeah,
Tell me what to say. And I'm like, no, because you don't know what to say until you've actually heard them. And the way you put it is until you understand
that's
them
right.
and what's happening.
That's right. And this is not just a modern problem. This goes back to the beginning of man. We've
Mm-hmm.
focused on speaking skills since ancient Roman times. It's
Mm-hmm.
just that nothing has changed.
Yeah.
And I don't want to criticize the educational community. It's not their fault either. How do you know to teach something you've never been taught? We don't have it in
Mm-hmm.
elementary, we don't have it in
Nope.
college. So what do? You don't know you have a problem until you realize the problem is not what we say, but what we don't understand.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. Okay. All right. My brain's like, yes. And I hope everyone else listening is like, yes, like you're in your car being like slamming the steering wheel, like, yes, that's the thing. And you write it on your sticky note and you put it. All right. So, all right, I want to jump in here. I want to talk about listening. But before we talk about how to listen, I actually want to
Yeah.
talk about what problems does it solve?
Well, I wrote a book called What is it costing you not to listen? So the
Mm,
costs are enormous, but they are hard to measure. It's like, how do you know that you have a problem that you can't see?
mm,
So because I call it death by a thousand cuts, it's small wounds that we inflict. It's
mhm,
not, we don't hurt somebody so deeply on the first instance. It takes a while for someone to emotionally bleed out. So it costs us a lot. So I want to make sure we focus on, hey, let's look at what it costs us. I always say, well, when was the last time somebody didn't listen to you? And how
mm,
did it make you feel?
mhm,
And when was the last time you were the one who didn't listen?
mhm.
And
Yeah.
did you realize how it made them feel? So we need to identify that first because the impact can feel invisible or
Mhm,
silent until the wounds add up.
mhm,
So what does it solve? I believe that listening is at the heart of solving most problems. It's at
Mhm.
least a component. If you world problems, school problems, business problems, human problems, if we're not listening, we're not learning. If we're not learning, we're not solving. So
Mhm.
I think it's the key
Mhm.
to misunderstandings in business, misunderstandings in relationships, to learning better, to comprehension, to being better coaches, all of it.
Yeah. And other problems. I in the courses I teach, right? I'm like, hey, come learn how to empower stressed out teachers. You're going to learn how to listen. Come.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sharing this because literally a huge access to empowering stressed out educators, burned out educators.
Mm-hmm.
The first step is to listen, but not just any listening, because there's quality, there's high quality
Yeah.
and low quality
Yeah.
listening, right?
Yeah.
High quality listening. And my assertion, this is Becca's assertion and not like the truth, but my assertion is default, all humans are bad listeners, and that
Mhm.
we have to actively learn
Yeah.
how to be a good listener. And that's your training because we are inundated, right? When we are listening, typically we default listen. I'm curious how you say this because this is how I say it. I say
Mm-hmm.
default, we don't listen to the words people are saying. We are listening to our thoughts, our judgments, assessments, evaluations,
Yeah.
interpretations, perceptions of what they're saying. We're listening to our thoughts about what they're saying, not what they're saying. So how do you say how we
Well,
default?
yeah, so I say the brain is the greatest enemy of listening.
Mm,
So what you just described is our subconscious brain.
mm-hmm,
Everything that's telling us not to listen. So we have the two parts of our minds, right? Well, three if we go to Freud, but we'll start at the conscious, subconscious. We won't go down to the unconscious. The conscious is what we're aware of, our thoughts and our feelings and what's happening. That's a very small portion of our brain. The superpower is what lies below the water in the
mm-hmm,
iceberg, if versus on top. And that's the part of us that's telling us everything that you just described. What do I think about what that person's saying? What story am I thinking of myself?
mm-hmm.
Am I planning what I'm going to say next? Am I judging the
Yes.
messenger? There's all these inhibitors to listening that kind of take us away like an impetuous child to do everything but listen. It's just we're in overdrive. So we have to soothe that brain in order to be present and listen, not just to listen to the words, but to listen at what I call to understand. Because I believe people want to feel heard. I believe they want to be seen. But the real way to get them to feel both of those things is to feel understood. That doesn't mean agree, by the way. Very
Mm-hmm,
important, because
mm-hmm.
agreeing and understanding have very little to do with one
Yes. Oh
another.
my gosh. I'm like literally finalized a workshop last night that had that on a slide.
Yeah,
Understanding is not agreement. I love
we're
that.
confused by that though,
We
aren't we?
are.
Yeah, because if I understand you, that must mean I somehow am saying it's okay,
Mm-hmm,
even if it's not at all what I believe or think. It doesn't
mm-hmm.
mean I can't understand you.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. I was just as you were talking, I was thinking about so listening's a muscle. Do you consider it a muscle?
A skill.
A
Yes, it's a
skill, okay.
skill.
And I kind of
Yeah.
relate it to, I mean, it's not literally a muscle, right? but
Yeah,
but it's
sure.
it's it's something I consider it needing to have constant upkeep. So that's my kind
Yeah.
of equivalent. Like if I stop going to the gym, my muscles will, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But so I have to, so sometimes I'm like still not great at listening because it is a constant skill that I'm constantly building, right? And growing and strengthening is the word I'd use. I was just thinking about I was coaching a teacher a while ago, and our first coaching session, he spent 45 minutes telling me about, I mean, my intention of the conversation was we're going to set a goal, and then I was
Yeah.
going to come in and observe and then like go through this coaching cycle with him. He spent the whole 45, it's supposed to be a half an hour conversation. He spent 45 minutes telling me how great of a teacher he was and how
Mm,
great his students were doing. And I was like, oh my
wow.
God, 45 minutes. It's been 40. And we left and I was like, holy crap. Like, what am I going to do with this? Right. And I realized, I was like, oh my gosh, this guy's been trying to tell me something and I wasn't listening. And so he had to
Huh.
take all this time to tell me over and over again. He wanted to feel respected by me.
Yeah.
That's all he
Interesting. That's the
wanted.
subtext,
Yeah,
right?
the subtext. He could, right? We as humans, we don't say it. We don't show up to someone.
Mm-mm.
I want you to respect me, and then we can get to work, right? And so the
Mm-hmm.
next conversation, when I finally was like, I didn't listen for what he needed when I showed up
Mm-hmm.
and I showed him respect very clearly. we got through stuff in like 5 minutes. We were right into the thick of the coaching. And so
Hmm.
I just wanted to share like what happened. Like listening well saves time.
Oh my gosh, thank you for saying that. Thank you for saying this is an efficiency,
Yes.
not just a proficiency thing. Here's the
Mhm.
problem though. People won't feel that right away. It's like, so I always say I can throw a football and so can Tom Brady. So
I
he
love
might do it a little better than me. I mean, I know how
it.
to throw a
Just a
ball
little.
just a little. So he's not only better at it, but he's more efficient at it because he's practiced it. So
Mhm,
the Navy SEALs have a philosophy, we rise to the level of training. We
mhm,
don't rise to the level of adrenaline. Oh, we'll lift the car off the human that's in trouble. We rise to the level of training that we have. And because we haven't been taught or trained to build that muscle in your words
mhm,
or to build that skill in my words, that we're just falling to the level of training, which is zero.
mhm. Yeah.
So, the on average, we only listen to 25% of what is said on average. We
Ooh.
retain 17 to 25 minutes of that 25%. So let's put that in meeting terms. If you're in an hour meeting, that
Mhm,
means you heard 15 minutes and
mhm.
you'll retain four.
I'm digesting this. And and then I'm thinking about because a lot of the folks listening have one-on-one coaching conversations
Yes.
with teachers or some of my folks coaches, which I are coach leaders. I'm like, yes,
Yeah.
do all the coaching,
Yeah.
right? So I'm thinking about those one-on-one conversations as well.
Yeah.
And like, what a disservice, how inefficient,
It's
to
it's
spend all this time
inefficient.
with someone and only hear, okay, wait, I want to make sure I remember this.
Okay.
25% only hear 25% of what they say and retain 15%,
Se 17 to 25%.
17 to 25. That is wild. You have an
It's
hour
wild.
long. I'm doing the math of like, yeah, like the even the one-on-one meeting, right? Like
Well,
what?
go into your schools now and think about the teachers' meetings they have,
Mm-hmm.
or the admin meetings they have, or so take it out of the coaching conversation. Think about all the misunderstandings there. Now
Mm,
put it in the coaching conversation and realize even if you as the coach are better than that,
mm-hmm.
maybe, well, we're some coaches have more training so that they might be a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, but their coachee's not taking more away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if you don't create a dialogue and a language of listening, how do you know what the coachee heard
Right.
or understood? And how do they know? Yeah, so that's also where misunderstandings happen. Even if one is a better listener, the other person may not have heard as much as you think they heard. So that's where things fall by the wayside. We assume because we've said it, the
Mm-hmm.
person's listening. I call it listening blindness. Like we believe
Ooh.
everybody can see colors if
Mm-hmm.
they can see.
Mm-hmm.
250 million people are colorblind. We
Yeah.
just don't realize it.
Yeah.
Same with it. We equate hearing. They heard me, so they've understood or listened
Mm-hmm.
to it,
Mm-hmm.
when in fact they have missed the meaning
Mm-hmm.
or even the perception of all the things that are said.
Yeah. So you said the language of listening. So
Hmm.
I'm curious about that. What is that?
Well, I'm dyslexic. I found that older in my life. So I always painted pictures and I can't, it's ironic that I created a map for listening because I'm the most directionally challenged person in the
I'm
world.
directionally challenged too.
I say I can get lost in a circle.
Yes.
But the conversation is a story, really. The tools and language are a story. So would you go hiking in the woods unprepared? I always say, some people say, no, I won't go hiking in the woods. But I said, if we dropped you in for a week, would you go prepared? And the answer is of course. But we go into the conversational woods all the time unprepared.
Mm,
So what are the tools you need to really navigate the trail to
mhm,
understanding, the path to understanding? So the common language that I call it is the listening path. So there's tools for your listening backpack. And how you get to that understanding, there's a lot of myths about listening that create this confused language.
mhm,
One example is we think the speaker's in charge.
mhm,
Nothing could be further from the truth.
mhm,
The listener's in charge, but we don't
mhm,
look at it that way
mhm,
because active listening teaches us to be relatively passive as listeners,
mhm,
right? Pay attention, give thoughtful attention, don't make judgments, maybe ask a few questions. And my brain, hurts
mhm,
already. So, but if I'm in charge, I have to organize the speaker to have them tell me their story in a way I
mhm,
can understand.
mhm,
That changes the whole dynamic of things. So when we know who's in charge, that's part of the language. When we know what it means to be listening and how to get to that, that's a language. So the tools really give the both the speaker and the listener the language so that they can communicate in a more common way, just like we read in a common way ABCs, right?
Yeah.
If I go to Spain, I don't know how to speak Spanish. I'm completely lost with somebody if we're in two different languages. We don't have a
Mhm.
common language for listening.
So, okay, I like your analogy around you wouldn't go hiking in the woods without being prepared.
Yep,
And so, you're saying we most often go into conversations unprepared,
right.
thinking, I mean, I'm sure no one thinks about it, right? But I mean,
Yeah,
or thinking that the preparation was, well, I thought through your observation or I thought through your goals, and
yeah.
right. And there's some preparation around that,
Mm-hmm.
but not preparing to listen or how to
Mm-hmm.
listen, right? So I'd love you to share more. What does that preparation look like?
So the preparation is really understanding what you have to do to get to the path of understanding.
Mm-hmm,
So one of the things is, for example, questions
mm-hmm,
are a way where, as coaches, there's a book called The Tao of Coaching. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
mm-hmm,
It's a marvelous little book. It's like a little guide you could put in your backpack, honestly. It's one of the
mm-hmm,
best coaching books I've seen, but it talks about how to ask good questions. That's a lot of what coaching is about. Ask good questions.
yeah.
But questions can interfere with listening.
Ooh, say more about that.
Well,
Oh.
it's really what I'm curious about, not necessarily the story that people want to tell me. So
Mm,
questions shape the story. I always say there's two listening personas. We have a curious detective and we have a defense attorney. And the defense attorney shapes the story of the person on the witness stand. If I come in, here's your lesson plan, here are your goals, I'm going to ask you questions that shape what I want to get from you. Sometimes that's appropriate. But most of the time, that closes the conversation down more than we think
mhm,
because we narrow the field rather than opening it up.
mhm,
So we know good practice is to ask very open-ended questions, but that's a hard skill for most people to do. They have
mhm,
to think, and then they're thinking about what they're going to ask rather than
mhm.
listening to what the person's saying.
Yes,
So
exactly.
one of the tools is called the compass.
Mm,
So how do you know how to navigate the woods? You need to know where you are directionally.
mhm.
So that's the compass is just 6 questions that help you get the speaker's story.
Can you tell us those questions?
I sure can. So so one of them is, well, let me start here. When you're listening, you're always listening to a story.
Mm,
Okay. Now, most people think there's no order or organization to the way we listen because we're terrible storytellers. So people don't tell their stories in order. They start in the problem, they start in the middle, they're all over the place. That's why the speaker can't be in charge.
mhm,
So you got to know they are completely disorganized. As much speaking training as we've had, we're not
mhm,
good storytellers by and large. So I'm going to organize you. So the first question is, take me back to the beginning.
mm,
Where did it start? We tend to start in the middle of the movie,
mhm,
not in the beginning. And
mhm,
you know what happens when you start in the middle? You're confused, you're lost, you don't understand, right? So realize people start in the middle. So take me back to the beginning is where did this problem start? Where did this story start? Changes the game.
mhm,
Question one. Then what happened?
mhm,
How did that make you feel?
mhm.
Tell me more. Hmm. You're doing it.
Yeah.
Becca, you're doing it. So great listeners, they ask for more by virtue of this almost imperceptible, right?
Yeah.
And the last one is, it sounds like you felt. So
Mhm,
you fill in so most people have 3 emotions to describe how they feel. 3. Brene Brown did a study of 7,000 people, and they were able to articulate 3 by and large. So we need to help increase the emotional language because great stories have 2 parts of the narrative, facts, which we're used to chasing,
mhm,
but feelings is really where we get more information and more about the person.
mhm,
Like you did, he didn't feel respected.
mhm. Yeah.
You heard his fact, 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 right?
Mhm.
The first time.
Yeah.
Because I'm great, I'm this, my students are great, fact, fact, fact. No emotion, which is, I don't trust you yet,
Mhm. Yeah.
right? So we
Yeah.
have to get both. And the compass helps us get both without thinking about the question. So we teach organizations, schools, teachers to only use those 6 questions, and it's game changing.
What I love is okay. So when I teach reflective listening,
Hmm.
right, which is kind of part of it is the one of the last question, one of the last things, and how did that make you feel? And
Yeah.
it sounds like blah blah blah, right? And so when I teach people this, I say there's one or both reactions happen. You get some form of yes and so someone
Oh,
says something, you reflect back, and you get a continuation. And when you get that, you did good because
that's
people's
right.
brains love being heard and they're like, this feels good. I'm going to continue this good feeling. I'm going to keep talking. And we can't help it. It just
It's
spills out of us.
powerful.
When someone is a great listener for me, I watch it happen. It is automatic. I literally know what's happening with listening and I can't help it. And then the other kind of reaction is typically some physiological thing. We see someone make more
Yeah.
eye contact, they smile more, they relax somehow, right? They uncross their arms. They
Yeah.
come, and this is subconscious,
Of
right?
course.
Something,
Yeah.
this is our brains. And so, one of the a piece of language I want to put to something that I think we're both dancing around is when we listen. All right, I'm putting this into words right now. Listening can determine which part of the brain the other person is accessing. Are they
Hmm.
accessing that beautiful prefrontal cortex, a smart part of
Yeah.
our brain, the part solves problems and has logic and
Conscious.
is
Conscious.
the
Yeah.
conscious, right? Or is it the amygdala? I feel threatened by you. I'm surviving this situation.
Right.
I'm just going to wait you out until, or say very safe things and not be vulnerable until this is over, right?
Yeah.
Listening determines which part of our brain the other person is accessing. So, anyway, I want to kind of share
So
that
that
thought
let's
as well.
marry that together. So when you're listening, that's why decluttering that
Mhm,
subconscious brain that you're talking about as the listener allows you to access asking about those feelings,
mhm,
which gets those feelings, which creates a mirror neuron process, right?
mhm.
If you
Yeah.
see two people in the hallway and their body language is exactly the same, their neurons are mirroring, and that's the same way you're describing with listening. Let me put what you just said in our practical terminology. Okay, so compass, you get the story. Okay. Then reflective listening. What you described is just let me tell you little pieces. We
Mhm,
call those the footprints. How do you stay step in step with the speaker to make sure
mhm,
one doesn't get ahead or one behind? The what's the next level of that is what we call the flashlight. So you're in the
mhm,
woods. It's dark, you can't see. The longer you've listened, the more the speaker is in the dark about what you heard.
mhm,
So we suggest shining a flashlight and showing them what you heard. So tell them not just little pieces, but the entire story of what they just told you.
mhm,
And then marry that to what we call the water filter.
mhm,
So our own thoughts and feelings contaminate the story we've heard,
mhm,
right? Our own judgments, our own thoughts, our own stories. So how do we make sure that what I heard and what I told you I heard isn't my story
mhm,
married to your story? So the water filter is a simple phrase I learned from a guy named Mike Bosworth was a very successful salesperson and did a lot of sales training that says, do I get you?
mhm,
So you summarize, you share the story, and then I say back, do I get you? And then what
mhm,
you just described was, now watch what happens. Listen
mhm,
with your eyes. You'll get yes and means yes. You'll get yes and they tell you more, which is
mhm,
amazing, like you
mhm,
described. Or you'll get yes and they mean no,
mhm,
right? And we that's a way that you start to look for where are you with this? Are
mhm,
you really, have you gotten them?
mhm.
And when you learn to watch for that, that changes everything.
I love it. Yeah, I love this so much. Okay, so I wanna go into the skill of interrupting. And
Sure.
and you said this is an advanced skill, and I'm here for all of it. And I know my listeners are here for it too. Because a pain point that I know I
Yeah.
experience and those listening are the like babblers. This
Yeah.
is like a well-intentioned person
Yeah.
that is you walk into their classroom and you're like, "Hey, checking on you." And then you're there for 45 minutes hearing about their kid's soccer game and you're like, "Oh my
Right.
gosh, I don't have time for this," right?
Yeah.
So or even interrupting someone that has just gone off path, right?
Right.
Like
Well
you are,
said.
yeah. So it's I did the path. Look at me
You did.
staying in the analogy.
Yeah.
So I would love to hear about
Okay.
interrupting. Tell us everything that you know.
So I'll go psychology first.
Mm-hmm.
Introverts think things through, extroverts talk things through.
Yes.
Okay, so you can tell pretty quickly if you're with an introvert or an extrovert, because an
Mm-hmm.
extrovert will do what you just described, talk, 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 talk to talk it through, and that can be tiring for some people. Introverts don't tend to do that as much, one. So that's one way to just reframe it in your mind. Oh, they're talking it through with me, so I need to take control of this. Second is they're terrible storytellers, because most of us are. Not
Mm-hmm.
everyone, but most of us are. Okay, so why do we interrupt? Most times we interrupt to tell.
Mm-hmm.
Let me tell you what I think. Let me tell you I have to go. Let me tell you why you shouldn't talk anymore. When you interrupt to understand, it's not
Mm.
so painful.
Ooh.
So on and on and on. My child is, it sounds like a lot's going on in your day. Soccer practice is happening. You're trying to get your kids where you are. You've been really busy. Then the
Mm-hmm.
person stops, right? Because that's different than, I don't have time for this.
Yeah.
Or trying to be polite or whatever
Mm-hmm.
the story is. And what I always say is then you earn the right to start telling. Then
Mm.
you say, hey, this is important to me. I want to listen, but I'm under the gun time wise. I'm sorry to, but I need to stop in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
And then you start to set the boundary around it, but you have to interrupt to understand, not to start. Most of the time we start, I don't have time for this, I gotta go.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't necessarily put up the roadblocks until people feel the safety of, let me make sure I understand you
Mm-hmm.
before I tell you what I want to hear. That's a very different way we interrupt.
I love that. So we interrupt for two reasons. We interrupt to tell, or we interrupt to, what was the other one?
Understand.
Understand. Ooh, I love that so much. I think about that relationship with trust too. So, like I know, okay, what this I have all the trust research flying through my head right now. When you said boundaries, it made me think about Brene Brown's braving trust
Yeah.
model framework. There's lots of frameworks around trust. Hers is not the only one, right? But
Mm-hmm.
she says the B in braving is boundaries, that we actually build trust and we have clear boundaries with someone else. They know what is acceptable and okay with me, right? That
Mm-hmm.
I communicate to you. Being a yes person all the time and then being quietly resentful about it, it does not build trust, people.
Mm-hmm.
So what I love about interrupting to understand is that it builds trust in multiple ways.
Mm-hmm.
When it does build trust, when someone feels that there's mutual intent, there's like an intention here that like I care about you, right? Mutual
Yeah.
respect, right? So I
Yeah.
care about you. I want to make sure that you feel heard. And then there's that duality of, and you can trust me that I will communicate about my boundaries, instead of what I see most often is people put up with it, check out, and just
Yeah.
wait for the person to stop. That doesn't build trust. That does not engender
No.
trust at all.
No, no, exactly. And when you tell somebody what they just told you, they're more willing to listen to you. It earns
Yes.
you the right. So you earn the right to say, this isn't personal. I just have a meeting. This
Yeah.
isn't personal. I care about what you've just told me. I'm going to tell
Mm-hmm.
you what you just told me in
Yeah.
30 seconds so that I can tell you what I need you to hear so that we can change the paradigm.
Yeah.
But
Exactly.
we're used to interrupting to tell, to
Yes.
talk, not to
Yes.
not to understand. It's okay to talk as long as you're communicating the understanding, not what you want to tell the person.
Mm-hmm. And that requires
That's the shift.
that requires listening. You literally cannot interrupt to understand if you have not stopped to listen.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love this.
Even if you
Uh,
get 25% of it right, though, you're so far ahead of the game. Think of it that way.
yes.
Even if I just heard 25% of what you said, but
Mm-hmm.
I told you that 25%,
Mm-hmm.
you're so, it's a powerful experience when somebody tells you your own story. That is the
Yes,
most powerful story you can tell someone, their
exactly.
own.
You know what my dad used to say? He was big in sales. He said a person's name is the sweetest sound to their ears. That's what he used to say. I
Hmm.
have no idea if this is true, but I've lived all my life believing this. So like saying your name Christine, there's something
Yeah.
neurologically that happens that's like, ooh, we liked that. And then
Yeah.
I just feel like that expands on that idea of like someone's story. What did you say?
Hmm.
Someone's
The
say what
most
you said
powerful
again.
story you can tell someone is their own.
Oh, I love this. These are like
So it's just, It's an
Yeah.
extension of that. And by
Yeah.
the way, there's a CEO, Bill McDermott, who used to run SAP,
Mhm.
huge, and people would say no matter who you were, he'd remember your name. And that stuck with people because he
Mhm.
was a big deal. And it
Yeah.
worked for a large multi-billion-dollar company
Mhm.
as the CEO. And people were like, he remembered me.
Yeah.
So when somebody feels like they've been hurt, like seen that way,
Mhm.
it's a powerful experience. You take that a step further. This is what, whether you liked his politics or his behavior or not, Bill Clinton had an amazing capability of doing is making someone feel like he got them very quickly
Mhm.
and told them their story, and everybody else went away.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
trust, trust can, what I say is like trust can override some other unpleasant things.
Yeah.
Like we don't have to do all this strategy stuff. Sometimes if someone trusts you, they will go with you.
Well, and it earns you the right to tell people what they don't
It
want to
earns you the
hear.
right. I love that so much.
Listening earns you the right that
Yeah.
to do all the things you want to do.
Yeah.
That connect, influence, solve, sell, tell people no, earn your right to be heard. So it's a slow down to speed up.
Mm-hmm.
We have to slow down to get there faster.
Mm-hmm.
That's what people struggle with. If telling worked, you tell me the building's on fire and you're a firefighter, I'll follow you out.
Mm-hmm.
But most times people don't like to be told what to do,
Yeah.
and telling rarely works.
Yeah. Oh, I love this so much. Okay. We have to wrap up. Well, something
Okay.
I would love you to share with everyone. You have like this amazing children's curriculum that you bring into school. So I'd love you to share with everyone about that in case they're looking for something kind of in the social emotional learning realm.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, we've been working with organizations and schools for a long time, teaching educators and business people how to listen. We
Mm-hmm.
have a game that we use in our workshops to make it very tangible. I say we put listening in people's hands.
Mm-hmm.
Last year, I was like, it's not fair that we're waiting till adulthood to teach this skill. Like, would you like to learn to ski at 5 or 45? Like, five's
Mm-hmm.
easier, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a program. So it's called the Listening Path Classroom Program. Right now it's for third to fifth grade. And I'm the animated teacher because I'm the coach that teaches the tools and skills, and then everything's provided for the teachers to facilitate. So we really want to change the world one listener at a time, and start with
Yeah.
young people. So it's a 11-week program that schools can institute any time of the year, and all the goodies are with it. A physical, tangible part of it, as well as the animated lessons.
I love that. And where can they find out more about you and your programs?
They can go to
Mm-hmm.
thelisteningpath.com.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thelisteningpath.com. And I'll put all of like your links in any way that they can get in contact with you as well. All of that will be in the show notes. So all you have to do is click on the link to access Christine. So thank you, Christine, so much for like geeking out with me. And
It's a rare experience for me. I love it. Thank you.
yeah, thank you so much for being here.